What is up, my friend? It is Mikey from Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. We are back. We are back, baby.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
If you tuned into my earlier episodes, and when I say earlier, I'm talking about 2 years ago, then welcome back, and thank you for coming back, and thank you for tuning in once again. If you didn't tune into those earlier episodes, don't even worry about it, because we are starting over. We are starting fresh. We're starting from scratch. We are starting brand new. And I got to tell you guys, I am insanely excited about what's coming up in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years of Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. Lots of requests to get back on podcasts, get back on YouTube. And my friends, we're going to deliver. We have plans for 2 shows a week featuring myself, but also featuring some other faces and some other voices. And I'm not even going to call this, what we're talking about today, I'm not even going to call this episode 1, because it's really not. It's more of a prologue. It's a preview. It's an introduction. It's what to expect from Basement Brewed Fantasy Football and the shows that we're producing. We're going to be putting out 2 shows every week via podcast, anywhere you listen, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're going to be putting out a YouTube show. And that's going to be the same production. It's going to be available via podcast and YouTube. Now, on Tuesday mornings, we're going to be releasing a show called Inside the 20. This is a 20-minute episode of, it's going to be myself and myself only. There's going to be no other faces or voices on this episode, or on this show on Tuesday mornings. But it's going to be a 20-minute or less than 20-minute episode of me bringing stats, facts, evidence, things that I find in my 30-plus hours of weekly research that I think you could use to be able to beat your friends on the fantasy football field, dominate your leagues, dominate your drafts, win DFS contests, and win NFL prop bets before the season and during the season. That's going to be coming out on Tuesday morning, so keep an eye out. Again, podcast, YouTube, whatever your content consumption of choice. On Friday mornings, we're going to be releasing a show called BBFF's In the Trenches. This is going to be a longer show, 45, 60 minutes. There's going to be multiple faces and multiple voices. We're going to have guests from time to time. We're going to have NFL personalities from time to time that are there to share their insights from an NFL standpoint. We're going to have different segments that the audience can interact with. We're going to be putting out, weekly polls for the audience to vote on. We're going to be putting out, I like to do a game called Who Am I?, where I release several different hints and clues about a player that I'm referring to, and it's up to you to guess who that is. But we're going to talk about news events and what's trending in the NFL, and in the offseason we'll be talking about which players are going to go where in free agency and what that means from a fantasy football standpoint. What coaching changes are going to be the most impactful from a fantasy football standpoint? What new rookies are going to make a splash during the season? We'll be talking about what happened in the week before, and more importantly, what to expect in the week that's coming up, specifically from a fantasy football standpoint. So lots and lots and lots of really cool stuff that's coming up, and it's coming up quickly, guys. I'm planning on pressing record on some of these episodes. I started writing what I want to talk about for the first few. Those things are coming up quick. So pause this episode, subscribe on YouTube, and subscribe on anywhere you listen to podcasts as well. I want to make sure you don't miss any of this, because we're going to have great stuff starting immediately, like here in the off season. I know it's February, but it's coming. It's best ball season, baby. All right. The other thing I wanted to touch on in this episode, but again, this is more of a prologue, is kind of an introduction to Basement Brewed Fantasy Football and where it came from. And the reason for that is, by far, if you don't know by now, the place that I spend the majority of my time on a daily basis is LinkedIn. It's not Twitter, it's not Instagram, it's not Facebook, it's not TikTok, it's LinkedIn. And by far, the number one question that I get on LinkedIn when people find out what I do for a living, which is fantasy football analysis. I create insights, I create resources, I create a community for you to use to dominate your friends and win your leagues. And when people find out what I do for a living, by far, the number one question that I get from everybody is, how in the world did this all come to be? How did you get into this space? I've been obsessed with fantasy football since, I shouldn't even say fantasy football. I've been obsessed with football since I was about 7 years old. It might have been 7, 8, somewhere around that age. When I was a kid, looking for a way to entertain myself, I invented, quote unquote, invented a game using pencils. I was born in '88. I don't know when you were born, but if you grew up around the same time I did, you might remember that there were pencils, individual pencils, and each pencil had a different team on it. The Packers, the Lions, the Bears, the Vikings. I had all 30 pencils. It was 30 at the time because there was no Panthers or Jaguars yet. And what I would do is I would close my eyes. I would grab 2 pencils out of the 30. I would twist them in my hands like this, and then I would drop one. Whichever team was still in my hand was the winner, and whichever team I dropped was the loser.
What a loser!
And I would open up my notebook, and I would record which teams won and which teams lost, and I would do full 16-game seasons with, like, seeded playoffs and everything. And I did this for hours. I did this for months. I did this for years on ends, okay? So I was obsessed with, like, football and the outcome of football ever since I can even remember. That eventually led to me playing Madden on Super Nintendo, specifically Madden 97. That was the first. I had Madden 95, but Madden 97 was really where it started to take off for me. And, well, if it was 97, that means I was about 10 years old at that point. And what I would do there is I would play a game, probably with the Packers, and then I would go over to a typewriter, not a computer, a typewriter that we got from my grandpa in the basement, and I would type a news article about what happened and how many yards Brett Favre threw for and who the Packers play next week and what to expect from that game. I would do that. I was the only one reading. I didn't have an audience. But I would play Madden and write a news article, okay? Obsessed with football. Eventually that evolved into me playing later forms of Madden, and at this point, I didn't even play the game anymore. I just simulated the games and did the scouting and did the free agency and relocated the stadiums or created new uniforms. I did all the, like, ownership / general manager type of stuff. And I would keep full notebooks of statistics for everything that happened, who was on the team, who won awards, when we won Super Bowls. Eventually that evolved into Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, which was much more convenient. Nerd! And then, when I was about 18 years old, I was introduced to fantasy football. As you can imagine, my entire life changed when that happened. A brand new obsession was born. I had no clue what I was doing. My first fantasy football draft was over the phone because I was up north while all my buddies were in the same spot doing a fantasy football draft. And what would happen is my buddy would call me and ask me, like, okay, you're on the clock. Who do you want to draft? Here's who was taken. I had no clue what I was doing. My first ever draft pick was Edgerrin James, but not the one you're thinking of. I had the Arizona Cardinals version of Edgerrin James, who was still productive, but he wasn't the same as Indianapolis Colts Edgerrin James. After the 10th round, I guess, after I had drafted a quarterback and 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs and 1 tight end and 1 defense and 1 kicker, I thought the draft was over. I thought you just draft a team. I didn't know anything about bench spots. So I was super surprised when my buddy calls me back and says, hey, man, you're back on the clock. And I'm like, I thought I was done. I thought I was done with the draft. And I just panic drafted Mike Alstott, who, if you're not familiar with who that is, he was a fullback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's not often that you draft a fullback in fantasy football. Anyways, needless to say, that season started out terribly. I started 0-6. As a joke, I changed my team name to I'm Rebuilding, which you can't do in a typical redraft league. And then in week 7, I made a blockbuster trade, somehow getting Steven Jackson on my team. And in that particular season, he went nuts. I'm talking Christian McCaffrey, LaDainian Tomlinson type of nuts. That's what she said.
That's what she said.
And he went absolutely crazy. Before you knew it, I won my first game. I was 1-6. Then I lost 1-7. But after 1-7, I won every single game, snuck into the playoffs as a 4 seed, upset the 1 seed, who had previously not lost a single game, and then ended up winning the championship with a team named I'm Rebuilding. And I'm telling you guys, that obsession grew to new heights after that. I mean, you fast forward to today, now I'm Now I'm playing in 500 plus fantasy football leagues a year. Now, granted, 400 of those or 450 of those are best ball leagues. And if you're not familiar with best ball, we're definitely going to be talking about that in future episodes. But I mean, I've won a March Madness style league where there were 64 teams and it was a $25 entry that paid out $1,000. That was a nice little payday. I've taken down a couple FanDuel tournaments. There's a lot that the obsession has lent itself to, and it's been productive. It's been financially fruitful of an obsession. Of course, it could have gone the other way. Now, as for where Basement Brewed Fantasy Football itself came from, I used to subscribe to several other publications where I would get their rankings and their projections, and quite frankly, those things never told the whole story for me. It wasn't enough, right? I didn't feel comfortable trusting these blind lists of, okay, this resource says player A, player B, player C, player D, and they're on top of each other, so I might as well pick player A. I might as well pick player B. I wanted to know about, wide receiver versus cornerback matchups. I wanted to know about the weather. I wanted to know about the, Vegas lines, spreads, over-unders, and those things didn't tell me the full story. So I started creating a resource specifically for myself that I now call the heat map. And it wasn't for anybody. It was just for me. I never had any intention of being a creator or a entrepreneur or a business owner or anything like that. And one of my buddies, this is about 4 years ago now, one of my buddies sees this resource. It's something that I use every single week to set my lineups. Basically, the long story cut short is I want to know if there's a player I want in my lineup or don't want in my lineup, period. End of story. My buddy found this resource or saw this resource and he said, dude, you got to put this thing on Reddit. You absolutely have to put this thing on Reddit. And I almost didn't. I don't know if you guys have ever been on Reddit, but there are some very unhappy human beings on Reddit, and it's a completely anonymous platform. There's no profile pictures. Everybody uses screen names. There is a huge opportunity for internet warriors to be complete trolls, be completely inhumane, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I almost didn't do it. I was like, what's the point? Finally, he convinced me one day to do it. So I put it on a fantasy football subreddit, the heat map, and it exploded. It just instant, hundreds of upvotes, lots of comments, lots of positive commentary with the occasional troll, but the positive commentary far outweighed the trolling. And it eventually got to a point where people were sliding into my DMs. I think I used that term right. Actually, no, I probably didn't. But they got in my DMs and they were asking for my Venmo because they wanted to donate to use that resource. And right then and there, a light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, there's something here that people find valuable. There might be a business opportunity here. There's something here. Now, all while that was happening, I had my typical 9 to 5 or 5 to 9, because sometimes it was a lot of hours. I came from a B2B sales world. I spent about a decade in B2B sales after college. At the time that the heat map was blowing up, I was the director of sales, basically leading the entire sales department at a local marketing firm. It was my job to build the sales department, make sales. I was the only sales guy. And I absolutely love that company and I love the people. But somewhere along the way, I had hit a spot in my journey and in my career where the work itself was draining. It wasn't, there was no fire lit. I wasn't hopping out of bed. I wasn't excited to do anything about my job, right? I was waking up, doing my job, collecting the check, paying the bills, going to bed. And that was it. So on the one hand, this heat map is exploding. And on the other hand, I'm burning out in my career. And eventually those paths crossed when I was at a water park with my family. We had a little spring break in March 2022. At the time, my son is 5 years old. So he's still little, but he's starting to get bigger and a little bit more brave. He had previously been terrified of water slides, but in this particular moment, he said he wanted to do the big water slide at this water park we're at. I said, all right, man, let's do it. So we waited 45 minutes to get all the way up the stairs and waited for the line, yada, yada. We get to the top, and of course, little buddy takes one look inside the slide, and it's pitch black. And of course, he goes, nope, not doing it, terrified, no chance. And I'm like, selfishly, oh my, come on, man. We just waited 45 minutes. I'm freezing cold. I'm like, we got to go down, man. We got to do this. And I grabbed him by his shoulders and I said, buddy, sometimes the most important thing that you can do in your entire life is the thing that you're the most scared of in that moment. Unfortunately, he did not listen to me. We walked all the way back down the stairs. He just would not do it. But when those words left my mouth, I listened to me. I had the light bulb moment of, I have to do this. I have one chance. I have one life to live. I'm not happy with what I'm currently doing. I have a chance with what I'm doing on the side, the heat map. I'm gonna go all in, and I'm gonna take a shot, and I'm gonna start this business. And I went down the stairs, and I went and told my wife, which that in and of itself could have been a thing, right? It would have been really easy and really understandable for her to say, absolutely not, you're quitting your job. Like, we have a mortgage, we have 2 kids under the age of 6 years old. Like, no chance are you quitting your job. And you know what? She did the exact opposite. She told me something along the lines of, and I'll probably butcher it because she's smarter than I am, but it was something along the lines of, we can figure the money out. We can fix the money. That can't be your decision. Worst case, you'll bartend again. You bartended at Chili's, you could do it again. What we can't fix is you living the rest of your life regretting that you did not take the chance when you clearly had one, right? Because I had that social proof of people asking for my Venmo. If you have complete strangers asking to donate for something you're doing, that's a business opportunity right there. So, at the end of spring break, March of 2022, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I dove all in, full time. Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. Never, ever had any intention of owning a business. And I mean, I'm 2 years into this thing and I'm learning every single day. Let me tell you, it's been a bumpy ride. Much more wild than any other roller coaster you could ever imagine. Like, there's so much that you need to learn about owning and operating a business. That's unreal. But I'll tell you what, man, I am jumping out of bed every single day, just always thinking about my business, always thinking about what I can do to, make the experience even better for my subscribers, finding new subscribers. My life, I've never felt more energy and passion and pride and purpose in my life than doing what I'm doing right now, which is Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. And don't get me wrong, like, my salary is nowhere near where I need it to be for us to keep a mortgage, keep the house or keep food on the table. But I like to think we are headed in the right direction. But that's the story of BBFF. And if you fast forward to today, I now have 300 plus subscribers. They're using my insights, my resources. I have an amazing online community. It's a Discord channel where there's 280 plus people in there that have become like full-blown friends. Like, I don't know about you, but the older I get, the harder it is for me to make genuine friendship type of connections, like people I want to spend my time with and hang around with. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the Discord channel every single day. It's people that, like, we had people that went from Wisconsin to Denver for the Packers-Broncos game, and they wanted to meet up with each other while they were, somebody who lives in Denver wanted to meet up with the person from Wisconsin. It's amazing. But anyway, you fast forward today, I got 300 plus fantasy football players that they're using my insights, my resources, and my online community, and they're using them to beat the crap out of their friends in fantasy football and dominate their leagues and win. We have people winning DFS contests, FanDuel, DraftKings. We got people cashing in on bets. I had one of my subscribers the other day that said they were during the season, they were on like a 27-3 stretch with prop bets. It's been an unbelievable ride, and there's nothing like it, and I'm so excited about where we're going. And I can't wait to see what the future holds there. Oh, the last thing I'll say, Basement Brewed has nothing to do with brewing beer. It has everything to do with drinking beer. That name, that's the other thing people ask me all the time, is where the name came from. The basement part comes from two things. One, I grew up living in the basement at my parents' house. Like, I played video games down there. Everything I did was in the basement. I was always down there. Fast forward to today, my office. I'm currently downstairs. My family is upstairs. So everything I do is in the basement. I've always been a fan of beer. I mean, I live in Milwaukee. My last name is Henninger, which is German. There's a German beer in Germany called Henninger beer. So I figured I'd combine my my love of craft beer with brewing fantasy football insights in the basement. So that's where Basement Brewed came from. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Please pause the episode or just wait till this ends because I'm wrapping it up here. But click that follow button. Click that subscribe button because we got a lot that's coming and it's coming very, very soon. I don't want you to miss it. So please, the best you can do for me and for the show is to like and subscribe to help it gain a little bit of traction, help keep us going. So like, subscribe, share. Go subscribe on podcast or wherever you listen on podcasts. And please, if you get 30 seconds to leave a review, that helps us so much more than you know. Otherwise, outside of podcasts and YouTube, you can always find me on Twitter at BBFF Mikey. And like I said, I'm more than anywhere, I'm hanging out on LinkedIn. So if you just start typing in Mikey, Mikey, Henninger, Henninger, you're going to find my profile. It's got footballs and trophies and a bunch of cool stuff right there in the name. So send me a connect request, send me a friend request, follow me. Turn on my notifications. I post on LinkedIn every single day at 8:30 in the morning Central, and most of the time it's fantasy football related. Last thing I'm going to leave you with before we get to producing the actual episodes. I have a promo code for this episode or this prologue for anybody who wants to try out Basement Brewed Fantasy Football during the 2024 season. If you go right now and you enter go to basementbrewedff.com and enter promo code BBFFPRO, that's going to get you 15% off your 2024 subscription, but I only set it up for the first 5 people to take advantage. So it's kind of like this Willy Wonka thing that only 5 people get to take advantage of that 15% promo code. So if that's you, if you're listening and you're on the fence, I promise you, you are not going to be disappointed if you give Basement Brewed Fantasy Football a try. And you know what? If you are, let me know and I'll give you your money back. Plain and simple. All right, guys. That is all I got for you. Cannot wait to get started. Cannot wait to press record on these first couple episodes. Again, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification button. Make sure you don't miss anything, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers. This brew's for you.